Never fear, I am here. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number 370. Ask me anything with yours truly, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel. As you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you are catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune Do dialogues. All right, so let me just make sure. Uh, Ronnie Reagan's here. All right, cool. I don't see anybody yet from the YouTube. But as far as everything looks on my end, we should be streaming over there as well. Uh, okay, we will just get to rocking and rolling. I had a ton of questions come in actually, and um, if I get to everything, be prepared to hang out with me for a little bit of time today. All right, hopefully everything's working. I'm a little bit worried about the YouTube since I don't see anybody popping up from there, and I don't want to move away from one screen to another in case I lose something. So, all right, well, we'll just wait. We'll just wait and see if anybody. Usually I can trust Bucky or Scorch or Frank or Del Mountain or any of those guys on the YouTube to chime in. Anyhow, all right. So let's get rocking and rolling. As soon as I posted the pre-publication stuff, I got questions from two of my UK colleagues, Steve Mosley and Joe Jacobs. Um, Steve Steve and I had been talking about something, and apparently I had used the phrase "typical Inosanto." So he asked me if, when you say "typical Inosanto," do you mean like your mind was blown, or do you mean there was nothing there that you hadn't seen before, right? Or do you mean it was enlightening in itself and that you were just blown away more and more, right? So essentially, he wanted to know what I meant by typical Inosano, right? And so, here's what I will say. What blows my mind about Dan Inosano is one, that he is still able to keep going at almost age 90 on. I mean, I can only hope that at age 90 I can keep the kind of schedule that he does, because like Ronnie and I were out there a couple of weeks ago, and he taught Friday night, and then he taught Saturday morning, like regular classes, before he started teaching the seminar, right? I mean, I teach for 2 hours and I got to take a nap, right? And this guy is literally on his feet because he doesn't sit and teach, right? Is literally on his feet for hours on end. And that I find absolutely fascinating at age almost 90. And even though, and I've been watching him do, this stuff for over 40 years. And I'm still always, Steve, I'm still always intrigued, because what I do is to try to look beyond the techniques that he's presenting, the techniques that he's teaching, and instead I'm trying to identify or trying to determine what guiding principles he's using. You see, because again, I said this recently. It might have been, I think it was when Josh Mahoney, who you guys might have met on Wednesday, when it was Josh, Ronnie, Nathan Hunt, and I were sitting down at dinner at one of Ronnie's favorite places, Ruth Chris, right? Um, and I blurted out, because I don't think I had thought about it this way before, but I blurted out that on questions about Jeet Kune Do or answers to Jeet Kune Do questions, there might probably always have to be, did I talk about this before? There might probably always have to be two answers, right? Because you have to have the art answer and then you have to have the philosophy answer, right? I think that's pretty smart of me, even if I say so myself, right? So anyhow, so Stevie, typical Inosanto is him just, buzzing like a bee still, um, losing his train of thought, right? Because the mouth is moving faster than the brain, or vice versa. The brain's moving faster than the mouth, um, and still looking to see how he organized what he's doing. I mean, he's such a master of that now that it's pretty much seamless, for him. But when I'm in front of him, I no longer need necessarily to identify like specific technique sequences and what have you. Like number one is cross hook cross, number two is cross body hook cross, number three is whatever whatever. I will play with that, with the memorization of it, just because I want to keep my brain fertile as well. But I'm not particularly interested in being able to say, oh, the Inosanto series is such and such. That's neither here nor there, for me. um, Joe Jacob said that he said, I'm noticing that it's very hard to find any martial art practitioners whose technique looks pretty good, not just in actual fights, but in training. And so he wondered if this is because being pretty isn't as effective and fighting is naturally ugly, or is it because technique is slowly being lost more and more and the fundamentals are all off? Well, that's a multifaceted or multi-layered question, because there's a number of factors, I would say, that go into this. Yes, real fighting probably it isn't pretty, but we don't really find, like, you don't find top level martial art practitioners fighting out there in the street and having it recorded. So people that you see, like Burt Richardson will, and I guess there are channels that you can go to or subscribe to or whatever, where people upload like real fights, from the street or what have you. So I don't think that you find high level martial artists out there doing that. So when you see these things on the YouTube or whatever, it's probably not high level martial artists. However, they still give testament to the fact that real fighting isn't always pretty. Now, when it comes to martial artists who are recording themselves and putting their stuff out there, well, that's a different, that's a related, but it's a different kettle of fish. So there are some people who they put their stuff out. And look, here's the thing, kudos to anybody who puts their stuff out. I don't do enough of it myself. But that is because I'm a perfectionist. And I don't look, I don't want to put stuff out and have to say, okay, listen, this is meant to illustrate such and such, right? I feel it's like you should be able to just like put your stuff out and put your stuff out and be done with it, right? I did realize, however, that the way it comes across, and CLRG is on here, so he will be able to identify with what I'm saying. The way your video comes across is very different if you just turn the camera on and you do what you're doing. Is very different from if you um, demonstrate for the camera. Very, very different, even if you're showing the same thing. So I tend to come from the thing about put the camera on and let it record real life as opposed to performing for the camera. Um, the problem is that when I do that, then when I look back at it, I don't like how it looks because I didn't do it specifically for the camera. So you're screwed either way, and so because I'm a somewhat of a perfectionist, I tend not to put as much stuff up there. And I have a small group, and so I don't always have people available, like one person to run the camera, and then a few other people with whom to perform it. We got to run class. We got to do class. So I don't have the luxury of being able to record um, performing for the camera. Anyhow, getting back to answering Joe's question. So one reason, Joe, why you see a lot of sloppiness out there is because people are actually sloppy. One reason why you see a lot of unrealistic stuff or a lot of pretty stuff is because there are people who do not know how to differentiate between the pretty stuff and the real stuff. They don't even know how to try to prettify, right? That's a word, right? They don't even know how to try to make the real stuff look pretty. Now, Joe, you and I, and Steve Mosley, and Ronnie, we get to hang with people who are capable of doing that, making their real stuff look pretty. Why is that? It's because from day one, they focus on perfection, okay? Not to achieve it, because it can be argued that perfection is not achievable by human beings. But they work real hard, and they work real hard at keeping everything the same. The way you do it in class is the way you will fight with it. And that is a lesson that everybody could benefit from, right? So those who are not smart enough to investigate and find a way to benefit from it, we can't help them. We did. We can't help them. So you're going to have to put up with sloppiness. You're going to have to put up with prettiness. And you're going to have to search long and hard um, for real fighting from real people, right? I don't think I did a very good job of answering Joe's question at all. Anyhow, Joe, look, just here's the thing, man. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, right? Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. Our job, our job as individual martial artists, and then as martial art instructors, is to work on doing as good a job as we can, and forget all that stuff that's out there. Because look, ultimately, right? Doesn't matter if we wake up and turn on the YouTube or turn on Facebook. Doesn't matter. There's nothing that says that we have to. And that is not good. And if we wake up and we don't turn on the internet, we still got to go train, and we still got to go teach. So whatever is out there online, really, that's just, it's diversion and divertissement, right? So use it to entertain yourself. I don't know about using it to educate yourself, or what have you. Okay, all right. So Joe, let me know privately if I answered anything because you see, because look, mobile technology, right? And I rant about this all the time. Mobile technology, this little thing here, right, has given almost everyone almost limitless access to a global audience. So then, just statistically, we're bound to get some good and some bad when people post their stuff. So, physically talented martial artists, like I said, might not know how to shoot a video that is visually appealing, right, and does the job of getting his idea across. So more and more less talented people, right? The ones who grew up on instant gratification, right? They don't value kung fu. They don't value hard work over a long period of time. But they are capable of flooding the internet with content. And then we have some people who unfortunately um, copy them. And so then we end up with like a vicious cycle of incompetence. But like I said, we do have a comparatively tiny, tiny group of practitioners of a little known system, right? Who, no matter what they put out, they always look good because they focus on excellence, right? And we're lucky and privileged to be part of that, right? Okay, moving on. Well, actually, let me check and see if anybody asked anything since we started. Okay, so who is here? Mark David Collins, David Stewart, Terry Valor, Mick Tully, Sat Riot is here. Clive Turner, hey, CLRG. Bob Landers. What did Bob Landers have to say? The Council of the JKD Elders has promoted Dwight to the one and only ringleader of, and then his comment got cut off. But yes, Bob, the Council of JKD Elders has promoted me. Yes, I am the only one who is permitted to speak at length about Jeet Kune Do, right? Um, Nick and the Chicago boys are here. Mike Yuski, um, and Nick says, "Well, at least a few of us so far." Right. Um, Frank says, I just read that Dutch authorities banned Penjak Silat in Indonesia for nearly a century. The ban was lifted during Japanese occupation. Have you heard this? Not, I can't say that I've heard that specifically because I'm not even aware, but I am going to look this up when I'm done, um, of Japanese occupation of Indonesia, right? Yeah. But I mean, from all the stories that we hear, it is customary for the occupiers to come in and ban the indigenous martial arts stuff, until some of their people get involved, which is why we have Indonesian silat and we have Dutch Indonesian silat, right? Okay, but no, I have not heard that, Frank, but I will look it up. Um, Del Mountain says, did you know that Ip Man's son Ip Chun is still alive at the age of 101? Ip Chun is also Grandmaster Wing Chun. I wasn't sure what his age was, but I knew that at least one of them was still alive. Yeah, right. And Carlos says, practice doesn't make it perfect, but perfect practice makes very good. Right. What was the CLRG? What was the thing that I used to say? Um, Wait. Oh shoot! I used to say something about perfection not being attainable by human beings, but on the path to perfection, proficiency is attained. Something like that, I think. Right. So yeah, you were probably trying to rip off what I used to say and couldn't remember it either, just like me, right? Cisco is here. How you train, how you fight. There you go, right? Magazine Retriever says Ramsey Dewey just said that a BJJ opponent fell on him and permanently injured both of his knees. I keep hearing about horrific BJJ injuries. So did the BJJ guy fall on Ramsey Dewey and hurt Ramsey's knees, or he fell and hurt his own BJJ knees? Right. My first horrific BJJ injury, not my own personal, the first one that I heard about was from a student of mine back in the 90s. So this might have been very soon after UFC one, here in Miami. where, because I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of the Brazilians came here first, right? And so this guy ran off to study BJJ and cracked his sternum within like 2 weeks of starting to train in jujitsu. So yeah, I've heard about it. You got to train safely. You got to train safely, right? Brooke Song says, "Are you posting training to post, or are you trying to be a YouTube sifu?" Um, um, well, I gotta get on even as regular a schedule as you do, Brooks, right? Of posting training. And when I do, it will be a combination of the two. Yeah, to be a YouTube Sifu and also, but a YouTube Sifu who posts stuff that people can actually make use of, right? I mean, because otherwise, why do that? So yeah, so it's not going to be posting to. It's not going to be posting. I guess if you post just to post, it's like to call attention to yourself. Oh, look at me! Look at how good I am! Look at how much I know, or whatever. As opposed to posting where it's something that will benefit people, right? And I really only know how to do stuff the second way, right? So yeah, but that's pretty funny, right? Ed Parker said, Scorch says that Ed Parker said Bruce Lee was able to hit me like a mule because he brought all of his specific facilities together at a specific time. Yeah, well, good, good, right? Okay, all right. Let me go back to and then I'll come back to the comments. So Liam Looking asked, why do you think people still disagree with what JKD is now? Do you think the older members are too tired to train in anything else to expand knowledge and research? Or are they simply stuck in the past and didn't understand the remit? Okay, all right. Let me do these one by one. Do you think people still disagree? No. Why do you think people still disagree with what JKD is now? Well, because people will always they're always going to be disagreeable people. It's as simple as that. There's always going to be, look, here's what we can always depend on, right? People who think A and people who think B. We can always depend on that. Now, add to that, just add celebrity to that. Now, not just celebrity, not just worldwide celebrity, but also unexpected death, right, of worldwide celebrity. See, I was thinking about this just a few minutes ago. We tend not to remember or realize that JKD was essentially a very small thing. Okay, it exploded after Bruce Lee died, and so I think that people think, for example, the Los Angeles school. I think that people think of that as being like, how we think how we have seen martial arts schools be run. We don't realize it was 1967. It was this young Chinese kid who was doing things differently. 3 years before he was available in Los Angeles, people had seen him demonstrate in Long Beach. But I think a lot of us have like this romantic idea of how things might have been or must have been because we've had decades of thinking about martial arts stuff. So we dream up all these ideas that it must have been this way with Bruce Lee's group and whatever, whatever. Since none of us were there, we don't really know. So here, this is why I always recommend that if you can talk to somebody who was there back in the day, then you will have a much better idea of how things were. Most of those guys are now gone. So if you didn't take advantage of that when they were around, then you got to suffer, right? How you suffer. But my point is that I sometimes think that people romanticize how it might have been without realizing how small it was. Um, the attractive factor, or one of the attractive factors for Bruce Lee, might have been that he was doing and saying stuff that not very many people were familiar with. Maybe they had seen this Chinese kung fu before, but this Bruce Lee guy wasn't doing anything like that. You know, he was being a little bit more modern, let's say, for lack of a different expression, and so on and so forth. Right. Anyhow, that wasn't an answer to anybody's question necessarily. Right. But so to go back to Liam's question, why do people still disagree? It's because people will always disagree. We can always be sure that that's what's going to happen. Do you think the older members are too tired to train in anything else to expand knowledge and research? Well, the older members, right? So we can't talk about older members as in the guys from Bruce Lee's time because they're all gone. So older members who are still around, so people who've been around for 40 years or so, um, who and if you've been around for 40 years, um, how much more researching are you going to have to do, or maybe even want to do, right? The amount of researching that somebody who's been around for 40, 50 years wants to do could differ from individual. I agree with you that the remit, Liam, was to stay open or active minded, for damn sure. Okay, to stay curious, to stay inquisitive. And so if that leads you down a path of looking at stuff or whatever. I was talking with my good friend earlier today, and she and I are going to go check out um, a qigong place, right? The first chance that we get. I have known about this practice for a very long time, but I have personally never investigated it that much. So, now that I'm a more mature individual, right, my mind might veer in a particular direction. So that's one of the things that you could say I'm going to go research and what have you. So again, if we go back, if we understand that there are people who are going to think A, the people who think A, if part of thinking A is I don't need to look at anything else besides Jeet Kune Do, okay, then that's why they won't. It's not that they're too tired or whatever. Their way of thinking is that everything that I need is in Jeet Kune Do. Then there are other people who are like, well, in Jeet Kune Do, there's this. And then there are other people who do stuff a particular way. Let me look at that particular way and see if it will lend something, help, enhance my Jeet Kune Do or not. There are people who, so let's call that thinking pattern B. So thinking pattern B people might still be using that approach 40 years later. Um, and who I'm not going to say one group is right, one group is wrong, okay? Because it ain't about that, right? And we'll talk about that in just a second too, okay? It's that one group does it this way, the other group does it that way, and we can always be sure that we're going to have that kind of duality in human endeavors until the end of time. Until the end of time, that's what's going to be going on. So Um, no, it's not that they're too tired or whatever, or it's stuck in the past. They just think a particular way. Liam said that Inosanto said in Combat Magazine back in 1980, what JKD is today, it won't be tomorrow. Now, I think that, you know, Cass and I were talking about this just yesterday. So this book was my copyright for this book is 1980. The original, I think, came out in 1977, right? So if Liam heard or it was reported that somebody that Inosanto said in 1980 that the Jeet Kune Do of today won't be the Jeet Kune Do of tomorrow, he could be saying that just because in this book, there's a section where I say that what Bruce Lee is doing is showing the athletic innovations that Bruce Lee was bringing to martial art. Because the section it talks about Roger Bannister, talks about Hank Lucetti, it talks about Dick Fosbury, right? And these are all athletic innovators. And I think that in Asano, he was drawing a parallel between those guys, right, in track and field, let's call it, and Bruce Lee in martial art. His innovations being one, a way of thinking. So, for example, Ronnie and I were talking about this today. So the trap in hands, right? So the trap in hands comes essentially from the Wing Chun. And what's a Wing Chun training method? You cling your hands together and you start rotating. But in the sensitivity drills that Bruce Lee um, taught, there's one that's from praying mantis, the harmonious spring drill. It's not a Wing Chun drill. So that is an example, a small one, example of Bruce Lee's innovation, right? When it comes to martial art, and then you go, and then the whole thing about, um, in Asano and him, the idea of blocking shields and kicking shields, and then borrowing from the idea of how boxers trained, right? And the introduction of the focus mitts and the track shoes stuff and all that kind of stuff. I think that Inosanto in 1980 might have been talking when he said something like that, because this is what Cass and I were discussing. Sometimes Sifu Dan, in my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, right? Sometimes Sifu Dan says a thing and he doesn't give it the context. Um, and I don't know if it's because he thinks, okay, well, when I say this, everybody who hears it is going to understand the context, right? That in which I'm saying it. I don't know if that's what he's thinking, or if he's just saying what he says and then leaving it up to people to understand, to recognize what the context is. Or maybe he just says stuff, and leaves it up to you to put the context, to choose whatever context you want, which I think is dangerous for him, right? Anyhow, that we'll talk about in a few seconds too, right? Okay, so yeah, okay, so let me go back to the comments here. Wow, you guys been talking, talking, talking. Hold on, let me scroll. Ramsey Dewey. A YouTube Sifu. That's me, Brooks, a YouTube Sifu. All right. Okay. Um, Alex says that Mahipal is currently very busy with Dutch Indo lines and styles. He should check out his recent post. I should check out his recent post. Actually, I do. I'll look again. Right. Andy Gibney. Hey, Andy. Of all your guests, who has surprised you the most in terms of the content they shared? Ooh, ooh, who has surprised me the most? Oh man, Andy, you're putting me on the spot. Um, in terms of the content they shared, who has surprised me the most? Well, I mean, surprised as in I didn't expect that content from them, or I was surprised. Oh man. Uh, okay, Andy. Here's what I'll do. I'll go back to the files. I'll take a look at all the names because I mean we've done over 300 episodes. So, um, hmm, I feel like I should have somebody on the tip of my tongue, but I don't. I don't. Who has surprised me the most? It would have. Oh man. Ah, damn, Andy. I was going to say it would have to have been somebody that I didn't know very well, but that's not necessarily true because people that you know well can still surprise you. Hmm. All right. I'll go through the files. I'll look at the names, and just from looking at the names, Andy, um, something will probably jump to mind, and then I'll come back post publication and put an answer in there for you. But that's very good. That's very good. Um, Bucky says, please explain what an unstructured structure to martial art training is and what it is not. Bucky, where would you have gotten this term unstructured structure from? Okay, so let me give you some background to Bucky's question, right? So, uh, did you guys see this? Right. So over on a Filipino martial arts page, a guy put up this picture, right? And his article was his post was about flow versus I guess you could say flow versus details or whatever, right? So in case you can't see the quote, which is attributed to Sifu Inosanto, it says, I teach the Lacoste system because it's important to flow rather than focus on detail, right? So the only thing that I said about this over on that Filipino martial arts page is that quote will be subject to gross misinterpretation, right? Let me read it to you again. I teach the Lacoste system because it's important to flow rather than focus on detail. All right. Now, here's what happened. My good friend Paul Bax took this picture, which is a picture of Dan Inosanto in stick and dagger, right? Long and short, with Juanito Lacoste, one of his Filipino martial art instructors. So it's a picture of two Filipino martial art practitioners. It's a post from a Filipino martial arts page on Facebook. And my good friend Paul Bax takes it and brings it over to his page. And his caption is, did Dan Inosanto miss the details of JKD? That's why so little structure. Okay? Did Dan Inosanto miss the details of JKD? Thus why so little structure. So, right? I love it when these guys do that because they prove me right. Okay, they prove me right. And so Paul is a high level member of the group that suffers from Inosanto derangement syndrome, right? So I like to take them on, and so I can't even remember exactly what the first thing was that I said to them, but here's the thing, right? Paul Bax doesn't know anything about Dan Inosanto and Jeet Kune Do. He doesn't because he's never investigated Inosanto, right? So this idea about thus why so little structure. so little structure when Inosanto teaching Jeet Kune Do? Did Dan Inosanto miss the details? So what did I think I asked him, um, please explain how someone who was entrusted with leadership of the LA group could be the same someone that would have missed the details. I mean, if Bruce Lee is going to ask Dan Inosanto to lead the group, don't you think he would fill him in on the details? Now, knowing Inosanto the way I do, let's say Bruce Lee was not giving him the details, I think Inosanto would have asked him. He would go, hey, how do you want me to teach this? I don't think Inosanto would be like, oh, Bruce Lee has put me in charge. I'm going to do things my way. Not him. He would be like, hey, Sifu, do you want me to do this? Or do you want me to do that? What do you want me to do? So I don't think Inosanto would have missed the details at all, Paul. Right? So then this thing about no structure to Inosanto's Jeet Kune Do, that's so bogus. It ain't even funny, right? So that's what started the whole talk about structure and and what have you. So the other person who got involved in this was Dr. Jerry Beasley, and he asked me if I could explain using no way as way and having no limitation as limitation. And I said, yeah, very simply, you add fixed to the using no way as way. So it is using no fixed way, as in when you train, it's this way every time you train. That's not Bruce Lee's approach. Okay? That is, let's pick on Shotokan. Okay? Every Shotokan class that I watched when I was still living in Barbados and going around and what have you started the same way. Now you could say that that's protocol and discipline and what have you, but when it came to the first technical stuff that they did, it always started the same way every time, right? The format was the same every time. That's the type of thing I think Bruce Lee was talking about when he says using no way as way. So Dr. Beasley, so that was my answer to him. Now, this whole no limitation as limitation, again, to me, here's what that means, right? It means that as you try to operate without limitation, you're going to discover what it is that limits you, because you cannot really have no limitation. You think, you know, that movie Limitless, the one, I love that movie, right? Because if that pill is real, right? Somebody, if you know if that pill is real, let me know. I would eat that stuff up, right? Without a doubt, right? Drugs like that, oh, I'm in, right? So as you try to be limitless, you're gonna discover what it is that limits you, and that's actually gonna make you better at what you do, because you will be humbled by your limitations. But because you went down the path of trying to be limitless, then you go, oh, it's like that perfection thing, right? Can't achieve perfection because you can always be better, right? But by trying to achieve perfection, you're going to get good. So trying to operate without limitation, you're going to learn the things that do limit you, and that's how you become smarter and wiser. That's my take on it, right? So the discussion did lead also to talk about no structure, right? And so what I tried to do was to explain that Bruce Lee had to have a structure, because if you're going to teach anybody anything, Right? And this is what Bucky and I were talking about yesterday. So I'm going to teach Bucky, right? Okay, Bucky, I'm a Jeet Kune Do instructor. I'm certified by Dan Inosanto, who was Bruce Lee's premier disciple in Jeet Kune Do. So I'm going to teach you no structured Jeet Kune Do. Okay, you ready? Okay, do. Because we have no structure, right, for our classes. I have no structure for my teaching. So therefore, you can have no structure for your learning, right? Okay, so ready? We're going to train. Do. And then Bucky goes, do what? I go, we have no structure. Just do. Well, what the hell does that mean? Right? So this whole idea that Bruce Lee had no structure, and it was interesting what Dr. Beasley said, because I think if I get the point that he was making is that um, you can have no structure when you're not trying to make money, but if you are trying to make money, then you have to have structure. Well, to me that makes no sense, because you could make money with structure, right? There's nothing that says that you have to have that. The only reason to have structure is to make money. No, because you can have structure and still teach for free. The reason for having structure is so that people can get it. You cannot just go, okay, let me use a yeah, okay. You can't just go, okay, we have no structure. Everybody glove up, put the protective gear on, spar. What kind of results are you going to have? Now, some people are naturally going to be better at it than other people, right? And if they're and if you got a brand new group of people, right, and you just go, okay, put the protective gear on and spar, and you have a couple guys that are rinsing everybody else, they probably don't even need you, right, as an instructor. But now the ones who are getting beat up, they're the ones that we have now identified are the ones that we could help. So how are we going to help them? We get rid of the ones that are naturally good at sparring, and then the ones who are not good, we bring them back to class. And what do? We go spar. No structure. Spar. Fight. Nobody learns like that. Okay. Imagine if, forget martial art, just in any sphere of human endeavor where learning has to take place, and we decide the ultimate way to teach is with no structure. Because Bruce Lee said, no structure. I don't think he said that at all. I think Bruce Lee said, right? Um, Bruce Lee did say, Jeet Kune Do uses always. That's structure. Uses always, but is bound by none. That's no hyphen structure. So it's like he said, there's a difference between having no form and having no form, right? I forget the full quote, but I know that the ending of the quote is that the latter is transcendence. Yes. So the goal is ultimately to have a structure that has dissolved. That's why, in the past, I've talked about Jeet Kune Do being the art of invisibility, right? Because when it hits, okay, when it hits, and I, and if J. Anthony Joseph is listening to it, he'd be pulling. He doesn't have any hair, so he can't pull his hair out. He'd be like, oh, there goes Dwight with all that philosophical mumbo jumbo, right? But the whole idea of it hits is about no conscious thought about what you're doing. You're just acting, and you're acting so excellently, it's not even reacting. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. So, Bucky, that was a long-winded answer to your question about structure and no structure. Right. Magazine says it was Ramsey's knees that are permanently injured. Oh man, he has to walk on crutches. God damn it. A similar accident happened to his friend, also a YouTuber named Rokas. Oh yeah, I did hear about that Rokas guy. Oh man. Well, see, this is the thing, man. You know, not to rag on BJJ or anything, but Again, I blame the internet. I blame the internet because people see high level stuff out there, and they're like, we were talking. When were we talking about this? Because I know for sure whose channel was it. I can't remember, but it was a BJJ channel, right? And in the comments, people would be like, "Oh, that's a slick move. I'm gonna do that when we roll tonight." Right? So a lot of people were learning from the internet and then taking it into their school at night and what have you. I don't know how safe that is. You know what I mean? That might be how people end up screwing up other people, because the instructor might have an idea of what the rolling practice is going to entail, but then you get some smart ass kid who's like, "Oh, slick move off the internet, I'm going to put that into class tonight." I don't know, right? But it's unfortunate um to hear about that stuff, man. That's too bad. That's too bad. Oh man. Wow. That's terrible. Bo Jackson, up. What's up from Atlanta? Oh yeah, yeah. Inosanto is there this weekend with Francis Fong for Train with the Masters, right? We obviously will miss you in Atlanta, Bo, but we're gonna. Ronnie and I are heading out to LA next Friday, so we'll see Sifudan Friday night. Then we go hang with Cass in the valley all night, all weekend, and then come back and do Monday classes with Sifudan, and then come home. So say hello to both of them from me and Ronnie, Bo. All right. Okay. Oh man, Jim Smothers' comment is way too long to put up here, right? Okay. All right. Frank says that James DeMille said that Bruce Lee never taught any one of his students the entire curriculum because he didn't want to give them the skills to beat him. I think that's James DeMille's opinion or belief after the fact. Bruce might have eventually taught everything to Brandon if he'd lived longer. I doubt very much that Bruce Lee said that to James DeMille. I think James DeMille came up with that on his own. I don't know that Bruce Lee ever had this thing called entire curriculum. I tend to think that to a certain extent, okay, to a certain extent, Bruce Lee was making it up as he goes. This is what I mean by making it up as he goes, right? So Ronnie and I were scheduled to do single dagger today, and we started out with a thing about trapping because somebody said something, and it led to that before we got to the single dagger stuff, right? So that is an example of making it up as you go. But you can do that when you have a lot of material. So I am yet to have somebody confirm that Bruce Lee had this fixed curriculum, because it just seems to me that that whole idea of a fixed curriculum where it has to be this way every time was like antithetical to his way of doing things. I could be wrong. But when I hear stuff like that, Bruce Lee never taught any of his students the entire curriculum because he didn't want to give them the skills to beat him. See, that's the thing, right? That's not true. That is not true. If I teach everything I know to a student of mine, that doesn't automatically give him the skill to beat me or vice versa. Right? Knowing more than my student doesn't mean automatically that I could beat him. So this idea that Bruce Lee held back from the curriculum because he didn't want to give the students the skills to beat him. No, you still, it doesn't matter how much you know, right? You still physically have to be able to better the guy. So it's not, no, I don't agree. I don't think so. I don't agree with that at all. But I don't know. I could be wrong. James DeMille spent time with Bruce Lee. I never did. Right. So, um, um, Nick says, not sure why the older members would need to train in anything else or seek any specific art to continue their expansion, etc. Why would they? It's not necessary, I think. Yeah. He says, qigong. Oh yeah, yeah. That is a thing that Nick does. Yeah, can be a fantastic complement to your physical martial art. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, okay. Let me go back to the stuff that came in, because the stuff that came in came from our good friend Todd Kenneke. All right. Okay. So the first thing that Todd asked was, "What do you believe it takes to run a successful Jeet Kune Do school, especially since so many in JKD have failed at building lasting schools?" Right. Okay. So here's what it takes to run a successful Jeet Kune Do school. The is the same essential ingredients that it takes to run any successful business. Okay? This is not technique. This is principle. There has to be a market for the products and or the services that you are skilled at providing. And then you have to have complete command. You have to know the ins and outs of how to keep your customers happy and how to make them repeat customers. That's how you run a successful Jeet Kune Do school, because that's how you run any successful business, right? There's got to be a market for what it is that you have to offer, and then you have to attract, right? You have to attract leads. You have to turn the leads into prospects. You have to turn the prospects into customers, right? And then you have to convert the customers into repeat customers, and then you have to have a level where customers become clients. Right? That's how you run a successful Jeet Kune Do school. Um, then Todd asked, should teaching Jeet Kune Do include making a fair profit to sustain a school, or do you believe profit undermines the art? Well, again, this is what I learned from Dan Kennedy. And don't go into business to go out of business. Okay? So, you, unless you have, some other way to fund your business. See, and this is the thing, right? If you have another source for funding your business, it's not a business. Okay? It's a hobby that looks like a business. You see? That's the thing, right? So, if you can do that, fine. Go ahead and do that. No problem there, right? But if it's really a business, then yes, you should never go into business without thinking of being profitable. Why? That, as Dan Kennedy would teach, the only thing that should be on the mind, and this is going to sound heretical for martial art, but the only thing that should be on the mind of the business owner, right, is profit. And that's it. Okay. Right. But people hear that kind of statement. The only thing that should be on the mind of the business owner is profit. People hear that and they automatically think that what you're saying is profit, um, by any means necessary, including lack of integrity. And that's not true. That's not true, right? Nobody who lies and cheats and steals in order to profit in his business is going to ultimately succeed. Now, it might take a long time before everything comes collapsing down. Yeah, it might, right? But I don't think ultimately a business that is unethical can survive, right? So that kind of leads to the second part of Todd's question, which is, do you believe profit undermines the art, right? This idea that it's one of the most old-fashioned ideas in the Jeet Kune Do world. I mean, in the martial art world, period. But especially in the Jeet Kune Do world. I've said this before, but I can remember uh, being told whatever the Taekwondo schools are doing, you want to do the opposite. And I don't know if, I remember the conversation being about business, right? But maybe it wasn't supposed to be. Maybe I was too dumb to realize that they weren't talking about business and they were talking about techniques. I don't know, right? But I had to wean myself off that idea that making money teaching martial art was an evil thing, because I fell for that hook, line, and sinker, as they say, right? And I'm very happy that that's one of the things that I was able to unwrap my mind right around. Um, and then let me do one more from Todd. Do you believe JKD should only be taught in small groups in garages and parks, or can it succeed? Oh, okay. So this is actually related. Or can it succeed in a commercial school without losing its integrity? In your opinion, is that how Bruce Lee intended JKD to be passed on? I don't know how Bruce Lee intended JKD to be passed on. We all know the romantic thing about I have closed, I've disbanded the Jeet Kune Do schools because I've disbanded all the organized schools of Jeet Kune Do because it is very easy for the students to mistake the agenda as the truth and to take the program as the way. Wait! I thought he had no structure. I thought he had no, huh? But he says to take the program as the way. I'm just kidding, right? So this is probably um, a rewording of something from Zen, right? From Suzuki's Zen book or whatever. But I have also heard that ultimately the reason why the Chinatown school, at least, was closed is because, well, it couldn't fund itself. They right the dues from the students couldn't even pay the rent, so it was not it was not a commercial success, right? Um, but I don't know that Bruce Lee was like. And then there is the thing he said about keep the numbers small but the quality high. Um, but I don't know that we can say assuredly that Bruce Lee thought that Jeet Kune Do should be passed on in garages and parks. I don't know that. And we don't know. Let's imagine that he did think that way. We don't know if he would have continued to think that way, or if he might have changed his mind. So we have to stop thinking about what would Bruce do, what would Bruce think, and make decisions for ourselves. I know I'm good at two things: airline work and martial art. So that's the only way that I could really make a living. And I don't work for any airline anymore. Sometimes I wish I did, but right. So it's not about Bruce, it's about us and what decisions we're going to make about what kind of lives we want to have. Right. Okay. So um, Okay. So I encourage everybody to read Joseph Harrison's, to read his comment. It's too long to go through here, but I encourage everybody to read it. And when he lets us know when his book has been released, I encourage everybody to get it as well, right? Because Joe out there, in the on the internet, I think Joseph Harrison has some of the best ideas about martial culture, modern day martial culture, and what it takes to succeed in it, right? Um, Brooks asked, who inherited the Lacoste system besides Inosanto? Was he the only student? No. Rex Parker was Inosanto's senior under Lacoste, but I don't think that Lacoste taught. I don't have the exact number, and Rex Parker is the only name that I can remember. But there were probably, I don't think there was more than 5 people that Lacoste taught. Now, um, again, I could be wrong about this, but this thing called the Lacoste system, right? I don't know that there was such a thing. Okay, I don't know that there was such a thing called the Lacoste system. Did he teach? Yes. But, and if by system you mean, did he have a method for conveying his knowledge? Okay, well then yes, there is a Lacoste system. But if we're talking about an official, like curriculum filled designated thing, like Serrata, because I know that Brooks trains in, well, Brooks trains in Stockton multi style, right? And but Serrata is part of that. So Serrata has like a fixed curriculum. So Serrata is a system. I don't know that there is such a thing as a Lacoste system. Um, if there is, I think it was compiled by Inosanto and labeled as a Lacoste system because it's, again, like, okay, so let's say that, I'll make up a number, right? Lacoste taught Inosanto 20 things, right? So then Inosanto, when when he teaches those things, right, he refers to it as the Lacoste system. But I don't know if Johnny Lacoste himself was that kind of a guy. Serrata, from what I understand, the history of it and what have you, Serrata had a school, right? There was a school, and they had people, and they had structure, and they had, rank, maybe ranks and whatever, and lineage and all that stuff. I don't know that Lacoste ever had that, as far as I know. I could be wrong again. So, um, and I don't know if Lacoste was thinking in terms of, oh, passing on my system. So the way that, for example, that Flora Villabril appointed Ben Largusa as his successor. So Largusa inherited the Villabril system, right? As it was, and then organized, and that's where we get the Villabril Largusa system. Okay, I don't know that it was similar with Lacoste. I don't think that Lacoste was like, oh, somebody's gonna inherit my system and all that. I don't think so, right? But Inosanto was not the only student. No, he wasn't. It's Rex Parker, and no, the other guy that I'm thinking about was a Villabril student, not a Lacoste student, right? Um, Dell says the guest you had that surprised me the most was Matt Thornton. His JKD bashing really surprised me. And not in a good way. Okay. uh, well, um, I mean, I can't I can't like specifically remember the bashing. I think Matt bashed JKD more on his own page than he did when he was talking to me. I can't, I could be wrong, right? Um, but I'll tell you what, I'm not surprised that Dell that somebody would make a comment like that, because Matt's bashing of JKD, as you put it, is pretty well known. So you shouldn't have been surprised. Right? You should have known that that was coming, because I think he started bashing, as you put it, Jeet Kune Do, long before he came on my show. You guys are hilarious, right? Uh, okay, JKD Mon. Is this Jamaican JKD? Right? While there are people on both extremes of original versus concepts, would you say the majority have more in common than they realize? Well, if you listen to Tim Rediger, who was on the show last Friday, I think, was it last Friday? Yeah. And Tim comes from the Ted Wong lineage, and that's pretty much what he said. That when Inosanto taught the JKD portion of the seminar, he was pleasantly surprised to discover that there wasn't that much difference. So again, I think that, I don't know how many times it is that we have to say this, right? The Inosanto detractors believe, um, um, amongst other things, they believe that he added styles to Jeet Kune Do, right? And apparently, the reason why they believe that is because he would say, okay, here's a kick from Savat that I'm entering with. And here is a punch, right? Here's a jab from boxing that I'm following up with. And here's a trap from Wing Chun that I'm using against the obstruction of my jab. And here is a arm lock and a takedown from Japanese jiu-jitsu that I'm using as my finishing technique, right? And that's what he would do. And he would call out the names of arts from which the techniques were taken. So the Inosanto detractors will go, see, right there, he's adding styles. He's calling it the Jeet Kune Do blend, right? So he's saying that Jeet Kune Do is a blend, right, of these arts. But notice how I described it. I said, as an entry technique was a kick from Savat. As a follow-up technique was a jab from boxing. As a counter to the obstructed jab, right? So part of the follow-up was a trap from Wing Chun. Okay. And then the finishing technique is a jujitsu thing. So, see, because I would see Inosanto do that. And like I said in the beginning, right? I'm more interested in the guiding principle. So the guiding principle, right, is entry, follow up, finish. That's the principle. If you hear Inosanto talk about trapping hands that Bruce Lee taught in the Way of the Warrior documentary, and to introduce the trapping, he says something like, the kicking and punching range, that it's, that you crash through that range pretty quickly. That's what he says, right? And you get to the trapping range. Um, so I can recognize what it is that he's trying to illustrate. You see, it is the flow from not combat distance to combat distance, but the flow from skill to skill. You see, so you could do that in reverse. Well, not in reverse, but you could do that differently. Like I could go with the kick. and my kick could get parried, right? And then the person might punch at me, and then I might do the trap to the takedown. You see? So if he had shown that, would they still be able to say that he was adding styles? Because now the other person's doing something, right? I don't know, right? Anyhow, my point is, what is my point? Um, oh, so that's what the detractors say, that he added styles. No. What Inosanto has always tried to show is the connecting thread between arts or styles, whatever term you want to use for it. Bruce Lee said famously, human beings have the same basic anatomical structure. So he doesn't believe in a Chinese style. He doesn't believe in a Korean style. He doesn't believe in the Okinawan style or whatever. Inosanto says the same thing. But Inosanto likes to study different things. And one way to get better at the things that you're studying is to teach it. So once he was given permission to teach stuff, he would go out on seminar and he would teach it, because he's trying to get us to invest in being active minded as well, right? Which is a good thing. But the detractors look at that and go, well, he's betraying Bruce Lee. He's adding styles. He's studying with other people when he had the good fortune, the great fortune to have studied with Bruce Lee, so he is dishonorable and all this. But in the meantime, when you hear original people talk, they talk about, Tim said it in Terry Tom's book. It's like five punches and three kicks. And I noticed that they don't talk about trapping, but they do mention grappling, right? So, and apparently that is because during the time that he spent with Bruce Lee, um, Bruce Lee was not didn't do any trapping stuff with Ted Wong, right? Like he may have done in the early days. So what is called latter stage Jeet Kune Do apparently is move around, right, and hit the guy, kick and punch. So elusive footwork and mobility, right, and just pot shot, bang, 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 just sniper the guy, I guess. But if that's what uh, comprises original Jeet Kune Do, five punches and three kicks. I'm here to tell them that at the last Inosanto seminar, so let me put it to the test. So it's cross hook cross, so that's two punches, cross uppercut cross, so that's a third punch, overhead uppercut, so that's a fourth punch, and there's low cross, so that's a fifth punch. Then there's a straight blast. So, I mean, I don't know. And did I miss anything? Ronnie, did I miss anything? Right? So that's the five punches of original JKD right there. And then we trained Jit Tech, as they call it, the front kick. We trained Now Tech, as they call it, the hook kick. And we trained Juk Tech, as they call it, the side kick. So that's the three kicks of original Jeet Kune Do right there. So yes, JKD Mon, right? Um, they do have the same thing in common. That's why Inosanto has famously said that original Jeet Kune Do is Junfan Gung Fu, right? And again, there's more to it than that, right? Because again, when you say it like that, and it's not the context of what you're saying isn't explained, then people are going to misinterpret it, and they're going to think that you're saying that JKD and Jun Fan, right? It's just going to be confusing, right? Anyhow, so that's my take on that. Um, uh, let's go back to Todd's questions. What is your opinion of 2 day seminars where attendees leave certified to teach Jeet Kune Do? Has this fast track approach lowered standards and made parts of Jeet Kune Do seem almost McDojo like? Right? And in some cases, become more about making a quick buck than preserving the art. Well, I don't know I mean, I know that that did go on, but I don't know, Todd, that it is still going on. I don't think it is. And if it is, you would hope that if a guy goes out and he becomes a Jeet Kune Do instructor after a weekend, and then he opens up, and he's honest with people, and he go, oh yeah, I got my instructorship in a weekend. I I would hope that people would go, oh, then you can be very good, right? As opposed to, oh man, you must be awesome that you were made an instructor in Bruce Lee's art in 2 days, right? 10 hours. You got to be you, right? I would hope that they'd be like, I think I'll go somewhere else, but I don't know. So I don't know that that is still happening now. I never liked the fact that when it was happening, here's what it meant. It meant that you could have a JKD guy who had been doing his thing in his town for 20 years. And then the JKD instructor who offers the weekend seminars, right, the weekend certifications, he is a colleague of that Jeet Kune Do instructor who has been doing his stuff in this town for 20 years. And he comes into the guy's town and he offers this weekend stuff. And then, he leaves. And what he has ended up doing is enabling the competitors, let's call them, right, in his colleague's town. He has just enabled them to hang out their own Jeet Kune Do shingle. So he's got a Jeet Kune Do colleague who's been doing this stuff for 20 years. And now, in 10 hours, he's given guys who had little to no previous Jeet Kune Do experience, right? He has now given them the ability to say, oh, I offer Jeet Kune Do too. That's bullshit. And I hated that. But I don't think it's going on anymore. So, I'll take that hate and put it in the past where it belongs. Right? Because that's effing unethical. Unethical, right? So, anyhow, all right. Okay. Uh, okay, let's go back to modafinil is the name of the pill in real life, Dwight. Okay, Alex, I'm on it, right? You take the limitless pill. Okay, you take the limitless pill, and I'll take an injection of Captain America's super super soldier serum. You guys are hilarious. Captain America's super soldier serum. Okay, cool. All right. Mark Town says, oh, this is the Jerry Beasley thing, right? Here's what I think Dwight is missing. Jerry said that in the beginning, Joe only taught by sparring, and there wasn't really a structure. Sparring is a structure. Dwight is correct. You have to have structure to teach anything. Well, yeah, Mark. I mean, Mark. So Mark pointed out that Beasley and I were talking past each other, and I said I understand what Beasley is talking about, right? Because I'm not a dummy, so I have the ability. I have the ability to understand what somebody is saying and not agree with it, right? I have the ability to understand what somebody is saying better than they understand what they're saying, since I happen to have more knowledge, right, about the topic. You see what I mean? Right? So this thing that Jerry said that in the beginning, Joe only taught by sparring and there wasn't really a structure. But sparring is a structure, Mark, as you said, right? So there was always a structure. There is always a structure. Because Literally and figuratively, you cannot build anything without a structure. Okay? This, the end result of this, there's no structure to this. Tear this open. Tear this open and you will see layer upon layer upon layer to end up with the product, right? There's no structure to this notebook. Really? Really? It started and ended like this? No. You got to take the different pieces and friggin' glue them together and whatever. It's so ridiculous, right? This idea using Norway's way. So that's you could do it. No, no, it's so stupid, right? I'm not even annoyed by it, right? Structure provides what's known as learning scaffolding, and scaffolding, Joseph, is a term that that Cass was using. I think he. But wait, have we done instructor conference this year? Shoot, now I can't remember. Yes, we have. Right, and actually, yes. What, Ronnie? Did we do instructor conference at Cass's March? Yeah, we did. We did. Right, and scaffolding was one of the approaches to learning that he mentioned. Right. Okay. Bucky says, asks, what does it mean for answers in Jeet Kune Do having both an art and philosophy aspect to it? Yeah. Well, because right. Okay. So Bucky, Bruce Lee chose the yin yang symbol, right? His stylized version of it as representation, symbolic representation, Bucky, for his art, right? Why? Because, like he said, which foot, when you're pedaling a bicycle, which foot is more important? The one that's pushing down or the one that's releasing? In order to go anywhere, you need both of them. So, right? To be good at riding a bike, okay? You need understanding of both. So you have to understand the art and the philosophy, because Bruce Lee did not develop a thing that was that did not have the philosophy imbued into it. Simply the approach that he was using. So if you want to call that internal versus external, if you want to call it hard style versus soft style. In fact, what did Bruce Lee famously say in answer to that? Is your style hard style or soft style? Right? He said the answer is not two, right? As in hard contained in soft and soft contained in hard. It is like an arrow wrapped in cotton, or it's not an iron bar, it is an iron ball at the end of an iron chain. So you have flexible in the chain and you have solid in the ball. Well, when I use that, the flexibility, the whipping ability of that flexible chain and hit you with the iron ball at the end, you're going to die. So your dying is as a result of a blend of flexible and solid, right? Hard and soft. That's why answers to Jeet Kune Do, more often than not, in my opinion, there's two types of answers: the art answer and the philosophy answer, right? Um, Scort says, speaking of successful businesses, many of the gyms here in Miami are too successful. They are jam packed from open to close. The owners have to charge more to limit the number of members. That's a good problem to have, right? Charging more in order to limit the numbers. That's a good problem to have, Scorch, right? Too successful. I love it, right? Mike Lee Canarek says, for JKD school to be successful is, wait, for JKD school to be successful is students. And once the students are enrolled, then it's all about curriculums. Okay. Yeah. Well, I get so what Mike is saying is that it's what I said, right? You have to get them in the door, and then you have to know the ins and outs about how to keep them, how to make them repeat customers. Okay. Some people say, quite simply, it's sweaty and smiling at the end of class, right? No, wait, yeah, sweaty and smiling. Wait, sweaty, sore, sweaty, smiling, and coming back for more, or something like that, right? I think Mike is something that John, is it John Graydon used to say that? Yeah, sweaty, smiling, sore, and coming back for more. Or did I make that up? If I made it up, I love it. Sounds pretty good. It rhymes a little bit at the end too, right? Bob Landers says Dwight is the ringleader. Yeah, of Trini Barbadian Jamaican gang here in Miami. Yeah, I am the ringleader, right? Okay. Oh man, Justin, this is a long one. There's a JKD school right down the road from me, but I just can't afford it. I even offered to help however I could, work for free, help build out the new space, IT, and still pay most of the monthly. It stings. Growing up, my parents couldn't afford, so I ended up. All right, Justin, I'll um, I'll read this one later, and sounds like I might reply to you. I might reply to you privately, right? Okay, I have no idea who this is over on the YouTube. I always wanted to ask you, Publix Kendall Drive 107th Avenue. What do you get from the deli? Who the heck is this? So that's my second Publix, right? I actually have four Publixes, right? That one's actually number two. Number one is Monza, right? That's number two. Number three is Dadeland, and number four is Miller. Okay, but if you see me at the deli, I am probably getting. Um, I'm definitely getting three pepper Colby Jack, and then I might be getting um, what do you call it? Barbecue chicken or the jerk chicken. Uh, who the heck is this? But yeah, but definitely that's the deli is where I get my breakfast stuff most of the time, right? That's funny. That's really funny. I hope I find out who that is. Um, okay. All right. Okay. Let me go back to the questions that were sent in. I hope you guys are hanging out and having a good time with this. So Todd asked, how long should someone realistically train before becoming an apprentice instructor in Jeet Kune Do? In Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, a black belt can take around 10 years. So if someone can become a JKD instructor in 2 days, what does that say about JKD standards? Okay, so let me stop you right there. Right, if there is a Jeet Kune Do person that gives out or used to give out instructorship in 2 days, that is that person. That is not Jeet Kune Do. That is that person. You understand? Jeet Kune Do doesn't do that. Okay, there's a person associated with Jeet Kune Do who is doing that. So it doesn't say anything about Jeet Kune Do in the macrocosmically as an entity. It's that person microcosmically. Okay, because not everybody in JKD approaches it that way. So let's just settle that. Um, How long should someone realistically train before becoming an apprentice instructor? So this is the thing, right? Okay, right? I've talked about this before. Old days of Inside Kung Fu magazine. Uh, from time to time, they would have a section where they would ask different masters, a question, and then you'd have like 10 different masters answering a question. And one time, the question was, how long does it take to get a black belt in your style? And Dan Inosanto answered the question. But what did Inosanto say? Inosanto didn't say, well, in Jeet Kune Do, there is no black belt or whatever, because that wouldn't fit in, right? It wouldn't fit in to answering the bloody question that Inside Kung Fu magazine is asking. So he just said about 10 years. Okay? That's what he said. Now, someone suffering from Inosanto derangement syndrome, even though it didn't exist back then, I hadn't come up with the term back then, but someone reading that would go, oh, Dan Inosanto is saying that he gives black belts in Jeet Kune Do after 10 years. And then somebody like me, who is not an Inosanto detractor, who is a fan of Dan Inosanto's, would say, no, he's conforming because, well, it's easier in some instances to go along. So, for him, that which is called associate instructor takes about 10 years. Okay? So that's it, right? So, but now the way you phrased your question, Todd, I started to think that it sounded to me as if you're thinking that an apprentice instructor is a real instructor. So I'm going to tell you something. He or she is not. Here's how it works. So let me go literally to what you said. How long should someone realistically train before becoming an apprentice instructor? I would say the longer you spend being a student, the better and maybe even easier it is when you're made an apprentice instructor. So if I have to throw the number, 3 to 5 years, right? Spend 3 to 5 years as a student of the art. Now, when you are given license and given a piece of paper that says apprentice instructor, that is permission to share what you are learning in order to learn it better. That is not license to teach. Okay? So I'll say it again. Apprentice instructor is sharing what you are learning in order to learn it better. Because you have to have people to train with, correct? So, but one of the aspects of it, and Cass was telling me this, one of the aspects behind that, because Cass, I don't know if you guys know this, but Cass was there when the whole apprentice, associate, full, when that stuff came into being, he was right there with Inosanto. Okay? So, the idea of apprentice instructor is that you still really, you don't know enough to teach. But if you are operating in a community where let's say it's like a rec center, and this comes from Cass directly. Let's say, and the rec center wants some kind of certificate, some kind of authorization that you are legitimate. Well, if you have a piece of paper from Dan Inosanto that says so and so is an apprentice instructor, that could suffice with the authorities, and so now you can go rent your rec center or whatever. And Paul Vunak talked about this back in maybe in the 80s, maybe the 90s, right? About how um, people would glom on to the word instructor, right, and ignore the apprentice part. Okay, so again, long story short, I say 2 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years as a student, and but understand this. You see, one of the problems with this whole goddamn instructor thing is that there's no rank in JKD under Inosanto. There is no rank in JKD under Inosanto. So if you hear me say something about an Inosanto black belt, that's an FMA. That's where he gives the belts. There's no rank, right? Now you might train in JKD 1 or JKD 2 or JKD 3, but there's no rank. So a lot of people think, oh well, to be ranked under Inosanto, I got to become an instructor. Well, no, you could just train and just keep training. Okay, instructor is supposed to mean something, right? Beyond rank. Anyhow, right? So, um, I have told people in the past, you want to spend time being a student. You want to be a really really good student. This whole pursuit of instructorship, it's like because and it's because people think, well, that's the rank. The rank is supposed to be instructor. Do you teach? No, I don't teach. I just train. Well, then why the hell are you an instructor? Right? Anyhow, Todd, I don't even know if I answered your question. Right? So, and so then, if you spend a few years as a student, then you're an apprentice for 5 years, and then you can be promoted to associate. So if you spent 3 to 5 years as a student and then 5 years as an apprentice instructor, year 10, black belt, as in jujitsu, you're an associate instructor. See? So I I started with Inosanto in 83. I was international, so I got permission from day one. But then because I kept coming back, right, and they realized that I was serious, in 85, I got my apprentice instructorship. And then 92, I was promoted to associate. And then 97, I was promoted to full instructor. So for me, it was 14 years, 12 years, depending on how you want to look at it, right? Um, but if in essence what we're talking about is people who are made instructors in 2 days, yeah, that's bullshit, right? Okay, let me go back over to the wait. Alex Hausman said that's selling surface level understanding for deep understanding. Sorry that I can't keep up with um, what it is that we were discussing when you guys make your comments, Alex. So, um, but maybe you're talking about the whole instructorship in a weekend thing, maybe, right? Okay, Hey, Randy Valor, what's up? Um, is there any strategy to attract MMA students to take JKD also? Okay, here's one possible strategy, Randy. MMA people want to do what they see the pro MMA athletes doing. So they want to kick and punch and elbow and knee and clinch and take down and submit. That's what they want to do. So here's a strategy. That's combat sport. How about I show you that same idea of ability across the skills of striking and grappling, but we're doing it not for the ring, but for the street. That could be a strategy. But again, because they can go to the Real Fights channel on the YouTube, and what do they see? They see people squaring off, they see people shooting in for the takedown, and so they go, well, look, this is real life right here. Well, that's what makes it onto the YouTube. See, again, people have to understand, right? People who post stuff on the YouTube, they know what attracts people. Okay? So that's why that kind of stuff ends up there. But that doesn't mean that that's all that's happening. Right? So if you can get MMA students to, and this might be a hard sell, if you can get them to be interested in the self-defense aspects of combat sport techniques, that might be something. Another strategy could be, hey, this mixed martial arts thing, you guys want to see where it comes from? And then you show them Sammo Hung versus Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. And then they see it there. Kick, punch, trap, throw, submit. Right? And you go, so this is Jeet Kune Do. This is Bruce Lee. This is the guy that Dana White famously called the father of MMA. And this is why. Because of this scene in the movie. So if you guys want to train in Jeet Kune Do, right? What you'll be covering both the modern day combat sport MMA, and I'll also be teaching you the historical MMA. I'll be teaching you where it comes from. And where it comes from has application both for the ring and for the street. So if you can get them interested in that, right? Historical MMA, street application versus ring combat only, maybe. Message me or reply to that, Randy, and let me know if that makes any sense to you. Okay. All right. Justin, yeah, Justin, I'm gonna have to. Okay. Man, Alex, I wish I could keep up with you. You have the best comments, right? Yeah, another reason for JKD to be elite, right? Alfred said, even that public sub has structure. Yeah, but I don't get subs from there. Actually, okay, so don't tell anybody, Alfred. But one reason why I go to that Publix is this girl at the deli named Marta, right? Who will not give me the time of day, never even smiles, right? And I try to be, I try to do the eye contact thing and whatever. Nothing, right? But I'm relentless, right? So that's why I go to that Publix, right? Nick says the three pepper Colby Jack is dangerous. No, man, it ain't even, it don't really rank, right? It don't really rank for a West Indian like me, but it's better than anything else, right? Scort says the main Publix I go to is at the corner of Miller and 74. Yeah, that is number 4. That's Publix number 4, right? Um, and Alex says at five at a bare minimum, depending on skill, experience, insight, most likely seven at least for most. I think Alex is talking about years as a student before being made an instructor, right? Um, Magazine says, I miss the style versus style articles in the old Karate Kung Fu Illustrated magazine. Yeah, that's fun. That was fun, right? Um, Randy says, that was helpful. Okay, cool, cool, right? Alfred says, offer Marta a 2-day apprentice instructor certificate. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Thank you, Alfred. Matchmaker supreme. Okay, all right. So let's see. Oh man. Okay. Let's finish up with this. Actually, this is from Alex Hausman. Okay, so this was it was a little bit long, so I'm just going to deal with two parts of it. Right. So, given that infighting and politics are the main issue in JKD, both within and without, and given that that stems from original, not understanding concepts, and given that concepts is the majority, okay, so I guess more people in the concepts camp than in the original camp, and concepts includes original. So he's talking about what we just talked in concept Jeet Kune Do. I can't believe I'm using these terms. In concept Jeet Kune Do, the 5 punches and 3 kicks of original Jeet Kune Do are taught, right? Um, but concepts offers more than original. Should we not arrive at the conclusion that original is superfluous? Right. Well, Alex, you're hilarious. Um, if I had to agree with something, yes, I would agree that it is superfluous. But again, you can't say don't try saying that to the diehard originalists. You know what I mean? Right? There's not going to be any agreement on this because, man, there's so much personality issues, right? There's so much personality issues wrapped up in this whole concepts versus original discussion, right? Fortunately, there are a lot of us who have surpassed it, right? And who find the ongoing debate, discussion, argument, whatever term you use, to be ludicrous. Thank God. But it's always going to be there. You're always going to have a Paul Bax. Um, you're always going to have the Inosanto detractors, for example, right? Those who think that whatever, we talked about it before. I don't need to go over it again. So, but then it, it, in the second part of his question, Alex said something about conservative thinking, right? And should we ban conservative thinking from Jeet Kune Do, whatever? So I'm just going to say this, right? I don't believe in banning any kind of thinking. Um, I mean, if it is thinking that leads to true harming of an individual, well, yeah, yeah. But you can't ban the thinking. You see, that's the thing, right? So let me go back to my original statement. Original. I don't. You cannot ban thinking. I mean, isn't that how we get in dystopian times, like thought crimes and whatever? Isn't that what Minority Report and 1984 aren't those things based on that, right? Trying to imprison people or limit people in the way they think. So no, I don't think that we should ban people from thinking a particular way about Jeet Kune Do, Alex. Right now, the other part that Alex got involved in was um, uh, Sifu Basman in Nigeria. He asked because I used this picture for the I use this picture for if I'm sure you guys saw it, right? Let me see if I can put it up there, right? I use this picture for the dialogues, right? Actually, I was thinking, man, I hope nobody goes, oh, Dwight is trying to sell himself as associated with Dan and Asano. Right? He's trying to pass himself off as associated with Dan and Asano because he's using his picture, right, to promote something. I can't really pass myself off um, as associated with Dan and Asano. Not at this stage of the game. It wouldn't be passing myself off. Right? Okay? That's not what it would be. Right? So, anyhow, so people rush to the conclusion, some people rush to the conclusion that Inosanto must have been coming onto the show. Sorry to mislead you. No, it's just that I had been posting a lot of Inosanto themed stuff. So I just went ahead and used that photograph. So, no. Um, so Basman in Nigeria, he was asking if why hasn't Inosanto come on the show? And people have asked this before, right? So Alex answered him and said that Inosanto is tired of JKD and all the politics. So Alex, I'm gonna rephrase what you're saying a little bit, and I hope that's okay. Inosanto is not tired of Jeet Kune Do, but yes, he is tired of the politics of Jeet Kune Do, but he's not tired of Jeet Kune Do, right? Now, uh, 95% jokingly, I will say this, right? The politics of Jeet Kune Do, right, is his fault, right? Okay. But it's his fault because he's not the kind of person to say, I'm the guy, right? So I said this 8 years ago. I was in Barbados doing a seminar for Wayne and those guys. And I said that in my dream world, right, in my perfect world, Inosanto would have stepped to the forefront and said, in 1974 or whatever, right? He would have stepped to the forefront and said, I was Bruce Lee's last appointed, let's say, instructor. And so if you're interested in pursuing Jeet Kune Do and what have you, come see me. If he'd have said something like that, things could have been very different. But that's not him, right? He's never going to say, I'm the guy. I'm the guy for what? Well, no, because he is the guy. All of us know that he is the guy. What I'm saying is that it's not in his personality to call that kind of attention to himself, right? So in my dream world, if he had done that, there would not have been the politics of it. He could have put everybody in check a long time ago and just let them know that he was the ultimate choice. I am not speaking for him. Understand that. This is my dream world. I'm not speaking for him. Um, so that's that. All right. Then Alex said about Inosanto, he's a star in his own right, but can't seem to escape Bruce's shadow. Again, Alex, I beg to differ. Dan Inosanto escaped Bruce Lee's shadow a long time ago. Right? Here's my evidence. Just look at how many people refer to him as Guru, as opposed to refer to him as Sifu. Guru, Filipino term, right? Versus Sifu, a JKD term, Chinese term. Okay? I dare say a lot of people stopped coming to him a long time ago, specifically for Jeet Kune Do, and have been coming to him for decades for Inosanto martial arts, for Inosanto Academy of Martial Arts, for that which is taught, presented, whatever term you use, by Dan Inosanto. And so I think that's why the term guru is used by, I'll call them the young, affectionately, I'll call them the younger generation, right? Stubborn old timers like me do not do that. But then there are some old timers who just succumb to the pressure of what the current generation does, and they refer to him as guru too. I don't play that game, right? Because guru don't have, to me, guru don't does not have the same connotation for me. Understand this. This is my live stream. So for me, the term guru does not have the same connotation, martial art connotation, as sifu. That's why. But so I think he escaped that shadow a long time ago. And also, right? And I think I'll finish with this, um, because Alex said that his whole life people are asking and arguing about someone else, his friend who died too early, and then he rhetorically, I guess, asked Basman, "How would you feel after 50 years of that?" Right? And I said, and I would correct. It hasn't been all his life, Alex. It's been since 1973, right? But I know you know that. And here's what I will tell you: the people who matter do not ask and argue in his presence, right, about his deceased friend. Okay, let me say that again. The people who matter do not ask and argue in Inosanto's presence about Bruce Lee. The people who matter are quite aware of the other people who have had profound influences on Dan Inosanto. People like Ramon Ancho, Robert Ward, Henry Slomansky, Amos Stagg. The people who matter are quite aware. Okay, so as who was it that commented on? I put up a picture of me and Ronnie with Sifu in Atlanta, and a guy said, Sean McCarthy, I think it was, said, it's good to see something like it's good to see Dan Inosanto getting so much love or what have you. And I said to him, yes. And Ronnie and I are part of a long line of people who cherish Dan Inosanto. So, okay. So on that note, let me just make sure I know I didn't get to everybody. I'll go through the stuff. Um, Sometimes when the live stream ends, guys, if you're over on the YouTube, I have to search around to try to find what you said during the live stream, because that kind of disappears. Over here on the Facebook, it stays in the comments, so it's easier to get to that. But I promise I will go through the stuff, and if I need to reply to anything that you put up there, I will do so. Right? Okay. So, guys, once again, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I hope you got something out of it. Next, this time, let's see, it's 5 p.m. LA time. So Ronnie and I will probably be heading out to the Inosanto Academy for the 5:30 class. So I won't see you next weekend, but then we're back in town the weekend after that, and then the weekend after that, where the heck are we? We're down in Winchester. Yes, Nick and Joe will be in Winchester. Right? Okay. So again, thanks for hanging out with me. You guys enjoy your weekend, and we will talk again soon. Take care now.